So my talk today is framed from the lab to the studio, artistic endeavors in urban community science. So if you have never heard of BioBus, this is our logo, it's quite flashy, we understand, but we actually attract a lot of students, and we have several mobile laboratories. It's like an infrastructure to bring science to the people. And oh, I'm sorry, it's like, I just like did this stuff, excuse me. Can do this again. Actually, I was trying to open a website, which would not have been like too bad. I've only done this like 3,000 times since we went remote. Are we back? Can you see this now? Any confirmation?
Yes, I can see
it.
Yes,
gotcha. All right. Yeah, this is like the black box you're speaking to. Thanks for all the thumbs up. All right. So I think I was clicking at an embedded link. So we are in New York City. Oh, it's opening that page. This is so interesting. Okay, just going to go down here. And we are having mobile infrastructures, which are like, we have an Airstream crammed with microscopes, bringing science to the people. So sometimes we ask students to go outside and bring us a soil sample, and then we see like bacteria racing across a slide, and it's just really fascinating. And we also have, we call this self-powered mobile science stations. If you're wondering how many students we see per year, it's several thousands. We actually, at this organization, we thought over the last 10 years, close to 300,000 students, and it's just really bridging science and society. Now, that's only one part of BioBus. We also have biobases. One of them is actually called BioBase Harlem, and we have another one at the Lower East Side. These are community spaces where we actually work with the local community to do science education, science enrichment, and teacher training, but also invite the community to actually approach us with questions they might have. And one of those research projects we actually did with the community was soil testing. So we have been approached by a community board member, and that was wondering, hey, can I eat the tomatoes we are growing out in our garden? And so we did some very basic soil testing. It has been done by actually middle school students. So it was one of our Sunday science projects. If you want to check that one out, I think we have a one-pager uploaded to the green room, and you can also reach out to me and my colleague, Ashley Piravano. She was actually the leading mind behind this one. Now, our vision is actually that all people achieve their full scientific potential. And we just do this by just really focusing on voices that are usually not really heard in science, or that are still underrepresented, which is marginalized communities for whatever reason that might be. And we have a whole pipeline built out for this. So we are having discover programs. Students just go out and or come on our bus. First time they're going to see a scientist, we just give them like really this joy of science. Very often they enroll in a deeper program, so they come to us to our site and get hands-on enrichment programs. And then we have a couple of students that actually stay with us for a whole academic year, which is the mentored research. And they are trained in also teaching younger minds, but they're also trained in experimental design. And in the end, they actually do their own research project, whatever they actually want to do. So this talk, we're going to pivot a little bit. I can talk about genetics the whole day, as a couple of people that know me would say. But I want to talk about science and art and everything that actually might like lie in between. And as a disclaimer, again, I'm not trained as an artist. I just have this scientific curiosity, and I always wanted like, how can these two things together? Are they the same? Is there some kind of cross-pollination? And most importantly, how can I use art as a way of scientific storytelling to really draw people in to actually like enjoy nature or enjoy science or just see themselves as a scientist? I'm just featuring here Christine Liu because I think she's an amazing artist, scientist, and science communicator. And she made this beautiful Venn diagram about, you know, what art can be and what science can be and what kind of key topics and terms are associated with both. And you're going to see, like, you know, in the middle is a lot of like creativity, obsession, mastering techniques, and so on and so forth. So of course, I can totally agree with this. But once you go down into definitions, and definitions are very important for both art and science, the term sci-art has not been actually defined for a very long time. So we had to shift from citizen science to community science, where protocols have been published at one point, or where really like nice definitions and papers have been published for a while. But sci-art actually was more or less framed or coined by Anne-Marie Atkinson in 2016. At least this is the first reference I found. And she said it's the post-disciplinary practice merging elements typically associated with the arts and the sciences, which leads to an exploration of those areas. So very nice definition, and I just want to leave it like this. What personally means science and art is actually like, it's really this intersection. Yes, there is some dissent and there's some friction, but you know, that's sometimes we're also like, you know, where wonderful things happen. So this is where really wonder happens. So I really see there's art and science, and there is science and art for sure. Now, I have a question for the audience. Does anybody know what Article 7 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights says? I don't see the chat, but you know, if there's an answer in the chat, I would be happy to hear it, or you can unmute yourself. Article 27. And I really like to refer to this article, especially when we talk about community science and access to science. Any takers? Do we have something in the chat? No.
There's so far just no.
No, big question marks. What is she asking us? Yeah. So actually, and it's a very like, you know, I get this response the whole time. And actually, when you're working in with like the local communities, Article 27 is actually the foundation, and it's telling us, you know, everyone has the right to participate in the cultural life, to enjoy the arts, and to share in scientific advancements and its benefits. So it's actually a human right to partake in science and also partake in the arts. And then it also says, you know, whatever you come up with, you know, you actually have the right for the protection of your scientific, literary, and artistic production, of which he is the or she is the author. I would actually like, you know, include they. So it is a human right to be part of the scientific process. And for me, you know, when you speak about justification, so why would you go out there, you know, and work with the local community about what concerns to them, or why do you want to have high school students like, you know, empowered and come to you and in the lab and really talk about science and really research like TR or Dr. Muth like said like in the talk before me, they are, I mean, they have a right as well. And, you know, they are really out there to make something meaningful. So keep this in mind. I think it's sometimes good, like, you know, to really revisit like old like declarations. So to get this a little bit broader and be a little bit more provocative, you know, I had the question, and I ask you the question, can art actually generate new knowledge? Because E.O. Wilson, who is like a fantastic naturalist, you know, says the aim of art is not to show how or why an effect is produced, that would be science, but literally to produce it. And so I was looking at several like, you know, interesting projects that actually, do we have like any art projects out there that actually generated new knowledge that has been or is being accepted by the scientific community? Because that's like one of the ideas behind citizen science or community science as well. It is only called citizen science in its perfect form if it's actually generating data that can be used and is accepted by science in the end. So really this bridging point. Now, a lot of citizen science projects actually use the citizens as data buddies, or, you know, oh, just go out and get some samples and then they will never be tied in the whole process. A lot of people actually doing this better and they're trying to do it better. But for art, you know, I didn't have much evidence. So interestingly, there was one science gallery experiment. It's called Origin of Life series by Adam Brown and Robert Ruth Bernstein that actually started in 2010. And I think it's still ongoing. And that actually, it was recreating the atmosphere of the Earth and adding an energy source such as light to the mix, which is replicating the experiments like from Miller and Urey in 1950. And that at this time, you know, has been done at least, I think, a couple of times. And they had some amino acids emerge. It's like the origin of life or creation of like life story. And then this experiment hasn't been replicated a lot of times. Now, the science gallery, like, you know, set out to actually recreate this original experiment and let it keep going on for a longer time, and then was just really producing meaningful scientific research. And I was really fascinated by this. So this is one example. And two other examples are were happening in the Science Gallery London and Science Gallery Dublin. The first one was about like a lie detector, like I think eye movement, which was the data was published in a paper, and the other one was also like about risk behavior. So it is possible to actually just really enact or, you know, get out there in science galleries and invite the community and invite the public to partake in a scientific experiment and create something meaningful for science. So that's my strongest take I have on, like, you know, can art generate new knowledge? Of course it can, you know. It will always generate private knowledge or knowledge, like, you know, what is your gain of feeling, or what is your thought you have, like, but just like being like really drawn into that art, right? Or is it actually just like creating friction for you? But also for the scientific community, there might be an output. So the project I was actually asked to speak today is, it was an outreach project using microbes, and it was happening right here in New York City in year 2015, and it was called the New York City Biome MAP. So it was a collaboration between many players, a community lab, GenSpace, leading project artist was there, Nuri Barshai. We had Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory involved. That was actually my employer back at the time. We had PathoMap involved, which is Chris's Mason lab. And then everything was hosted by the new museum at the Ideas City Festival. And then we also had designers, which was Tal Omer Golam. The idea behind this all was like we were invited by the new museum to partake in the Ideas City Street Festival. And the topic on that for that year was actually Roberto Calvalli's Invisible City. And we were challenged to actually just create something that could make that actually is framed around the invisible city. And what better would it be just like to really go out there and show people all the like invisible microbial world they live in and they have on their body and they're around us. So we decided to actually make an Agar Art or bio art project. We were challenging people to come to the place and paint with bacteria on prepared petri dishes that actually nurture bacteria to grow. We did this all like very safe. We had safe bacteria to paint with, and we also were gloved and sanitizing, so that was all good. But it was a really nice Idea City like street festival, and we had many people stopping by. And while they were stopping by, we actually told them, like, what do you know about the microbiome? Do you know how we actually, like, you know, genetically engineer bacteria, or are all bacteria bad? So there was like this really wonderful like outreach element for people that, you know, stop by, were drawn in by art, but in the end, like probably never be thought about, like, you know, genetic engineering deeply at that level, that we could just be like, you know, tied together at that point. So once the people painted with the microbes on these little plates, and they could actually pick one section of a part of the city of New York City, we brought these plates back to the lab, and the people were invited to come and visit us at the laboratory space to just see how the artwork actually turned out. So most people were surprised to learn that, you know, bacteria, they also need time to grow, and we don't see effect immediately. So a couple of days later, they showed up, or many of them showed up, and we did a wonderful discussion round around this, and people actually saw the artwork. The plates in the end then have been photographed and digitally stitched together. So we actually had the whole New York City street grid assembled, and shows all the streets and waterways. And it happened that at this time, actually, the American Society for Microbiology opened the Agar Art contest. So this was the international contest for artists that actually paint with microbes. And we were like, maybe we should just submit this to this contest, and maybe, you know, people are interested. So, and it turned out we came in as a second place for that initial year. We were invited to the ASM headquarters to give a talk about the outreach component and about, you know, how we actually came about with this idea. We got a lot of press features, and it was just a very exciting time. Now, what I also want to point out is, because we have been doing this project and we got a huge response, ASM actually approached us afterwards if we could help them to just, like, you know, create closer ties with the community out there. And we happily help them to put an how-to guide together to really make sure people understand, you know, microbiology has certain rules and certain limitations. Again, safety first, but that we're also happy to be consultants on if they want to approach different community labs. And since that, then, you know, this ASM Agar Art contest is really going strong. We have been hosting several sessions at our institutions. So again, back then I was at Cosmic Harbor Laboratory. We had Saturday DNAs where students just came over and kept painting. I kept submitting the artworks. I won the Agar Art contest at 2 more times. So I'm still surprised about all of this, but every year I just have a new innovation. So in this little right side here, you see that I actually use black agar. So the colors are really popping stronger for the microbes, and the microbes have been genetically engineered. So they're actually going to fluoresce. So I really try to play around with different canvas. But the contest, you know, spread out internationally, and many community labs really just took the New York City Biome MAP as case study that it is really possible to draw in people and talk about microbial communities and why, you know, genetic engineering or everything about them is just very important. And I also have at the bottom right corner, at least when you see from that slide, that picture was taken at the United Nations Assembly 74 in New York. And they also had an ASM Agar Art gallery event, and I was actually invited to, again, speak about this artwork and its outreach component. So it really shows me, like, sometimes the story matters that you tell to people. For me, it was like, you know, it was a very natural way to speak about microbes. It also helped, like, you know, that you had an artist present, that you had a scientist present, so we could actually really shed light on different angle. And again, this has been a collective artwork. It would not have been possible without all the people participating. But I also had like many other people involved, and that really included like people from community labs and also like people from museums. So where do we go from there? We have been invited after this, and when I say we, it actually was again Nori Barshai and myself to do a similar artwork for the Aspen Ideas Festival. The audience here was completely different because it was actually festival attendees and that came from different backgrounds, like science professionals, health professionals, politicians, and we actually painted the iconic maroon bells. And it, again, the response was very similar. People were just amazed that you could do this. They learned so much about the microbiome, and we were just really peppered with questions. So I'm gonna wrap this up right now. Hope you have some questions for me. And again, if you wanna get in touch, I'm happy to help you out. And I wanna give a huge shout out for all, again, the citizen scientists that have been with me, creating with me art, and also like the artists that actually helped me to, again, shed a different angle on the microbiome.